Jennifer Taps.
Good morning, everyone. Well, this morning our topic is a little different and sometimes. So, Momento Mori is Latin for remember you must die. So, in the theme of October and some of our other activities here, a little bit about customs of the Victorian period and a little bit about Momento Mori and how that came about. It developed into an artistic symbol through the years, a reminder of that eventually we all do depart this earth. And it's believed to be started kind of as a Roman tradition, and its point wasn't to be morbid, or to promote fear, but almost more that reverence of those who had passed, the reverence that life is short, you should enjoy it while you're here kind of thing. And so you go back to Socrates, who actually is quoted as saying apparently that the proper practice of philosophy is nothing else than about dying and being dead. So, you have to live for a while. And of course the Egyptian customs, with their customs of burial and of being celebrating life with their elaborate death chambers and thinking that you would be reborn or go on. But they also have a custom that sometimes they would bring a skeleton to a party, I'll say, when they're out doing things, and be cheering, be drink and merry, because when you're dead, you'll look like this. So, some different things. So you see those symbols come through in art, and especially during the plague. It became very prominent to have those symbols of the skull, the crossbones, and there was a whole new genre of art called the Dance of the Dead, and you'll see those paintings that often have those symbols in them at that time. So jumping forward a little bit to the Victorian time period, they did have a whole set of customs and different things that they would do when someone passed away. So mourning clothing was sort of an outward expression of a family to show their inner feelings. There were rules about who wore what and for how long. They were actually fairly complicated at different times and probably had different etiquette books that might be telling you a little bit different, just, oh, you should do it for this long, and this another one might say for a different period. So there was some flexibility, I'll say there. But in general, women had it a little longer than men. They would have to be in mourning for a longer time period. But with the clothing, the women also, of course, men, you often have a darker suit, so you're not changing your wardrobe a whole lot either, possibly. But women would wear all black. So actually, in the middle kind of the table, and we have a black tablecloth and a black items this morning, but we have a hat with a crepe veil attached to it, and that actually belonged to Mary Harrison McKee. And we believe that she probably wore this at both her mother and her father's funerals. So crepe in particular is associated with mourning because they say that it doesn't combine well with other clothing sometimes. And you would not be wearing very shiny clothing necessarily either. So satins, and the crepe has that very matte finish. So that was something you would see a lot of in that time period when you were in mourning. Now, as the period of mourning went on, the color of your clothing could change a little bit. And you could add a little bit of gray, a little bit of mauve or purple, eventually a little bit of white. Sometimes as these transitions are going on, it would be called a half mourning period. But women, when your husband died, you could be in mourning for at least 4 years. Some ladies chose to continue that on their entire lives. Men, you can wear an armband and kind of get away with it. But if you notice with Mary Lord Harrison, in her later years, she often wears black. Of course, I'm partial to that color myself. But ladies, depending on how strict you wanted to be with your mourning, you would have 2 years of full mourning where you're wearing the darker colors, not going out in public as much, not going to events, and maybe 2 years of like half mourning. And as time went on, this would decrease and you start to wear more color. So again, the time of mourning depended on the relationship of the deceased. There were different periods expected by society at that time. Again, the widows would have a longer time period. Children were not necessarily, if you had toddlers, they were not expected to wear black necessarily. But men, you would often wear an armband as time went on, but if you did have a different suit, you would often wear the frock coat. Frock coats became less fashionable as the Victorian period went on, but you, again, are not changing your suits a whole lot in that respect either. Other ways that you're showing it, though, are like the calling cards, and there are a couple of calling cards on the table up here. Actually, one for Dr. Scott, Caroline's father, and one that says the president. So, of course, with Caroline Harrison dying in the White House, he would have a calling card that says the president. The border around that card, when you were in mourning, you have a black border around your card. And to begin with, it would be thicker, and as time passes, you can let that line go smaller. And we do have a couple of examples of other people's calling cards in our collection, where I've seen one that was probably almost a half an inch thick around their card, and then by the end, you're just going to have a very little pencil line around the edge of the card. So those are kind of medium there, and that we have out today. So again, as time passes, you're going to let that get smaller and disappear eventually. The crepe bunting is something else that would be used for decoration. So we think of, having the 4th of July bunting and the fans out there, but they would actually decorate for funerals as well. And the photograph we have at the front center of the table is a photograph of the inside of the First Presbyterian Church for Benjamin Harrison's funeral. And if you look closely, you see the very large flower arrangements, but they do have crepe and black decorating the pulpit area and along the benches and stuff too. And if any of you have ever seen when Lincoln stayed here in Indianapolis as the train went through, they decorated the Capitol building and actually the fence outside the Capitol building with a lot of black crepe as well. You would often have maybe a black crepe, also called a sash or a bow, that you might have on your front door, so that if people were coming to visit, maybe for some reason they hadn't heard that someone in your family had passed away, they would see that and know that someone in your family had passed. So they would have these different symbols as well. So one of the things that we have out right today is also, I'll call it hair art. The large framed piece there is from another family. This was given to us just to have an example of something like this in our collection. So it is a framed hair wreath. It belonged to the Swinson family. So there's a photograph in the middle, a tintype of the couple, and this was made by the donor's grandmother, Louisa House. So it was in the 1870s, so something they would do not necessarily always at the time of death or directly related to someone's passing, is collect their hair and make these decorations. So sometimes it's almost like a timeline. And I'm not sure, we don't have a lot of information on this piece, but if they saved hair through the years and gathered and made these ornaments, and then have the photo in the middle, then it's a remembrance of that couple and their hair. Actually, their hair. So, but hair comes up in a couple of other different ways too. Hair is interesting, other things, I'll say, decay over time. Hair holds its pigment longer and doesn't decay, so it's something that lasts for a longer time period. And they knew this, so this was, a way to remember them as well. They would even sometimes take hair and grind it down for the pigments and actually use it in paint as well. They often saved a lock of hair. So the brooch over here to this side is a brooch that actually belonged to Anna Sims Harrison, William Henry Harrison's wife. And of course, most of you know the story of William Henry Harrison passing away in Washington, D.C., and that Anna had not gone to Washington yet, and the travel in the 1840s. So she did get a lock of his hair. And the back side, so the display here is showing the back side of that brooch. You see the pin where she would pin it on. You would pin this probably close to your heart, wherever you're wearing pins, kind of close to your heart. and the hair is on the back side of the pen with a little glass window so that you can see it. And then the front of this pen is black onyx. So that is something else that in that Victorian time period, when you're wearing jewelry, your mourning jewelry is going to be the black onyx or a dark color. Again, not to be as bright and flashy and reflective and through there as well. So there are lots of different things actually. That bracelets made out of hair sometimes of your loved one. And just recently, if you Google the Newberry Library in Chicago, they just shared a scrapbook, I'll call it, of a family where they had braided little pieces of their hair and have it in the scrapbook and the name of the person, and it was, you know, several pages then of just their hair and their name. So something that they did at that time. So the other items that we have out today, we have some ribbons. There's one little frame for Caroline, one on the table for Benjamin, one over here for William Henry Harrison. This is something your common person probably is not going to have a memorial ribbon, but famous people, presidents, first ladies, they often made these memorial ribbons. The one for Benjamin Harrison, I think they actually were wearing it. There's some photographs they might have worn it to his funeral, actually. And then there are two cards there for Benjamin Harrison's funeral. One is a ticket to allow you into the Capitol building, as he lay and stayed here, and then to the church. So he was here in the house in the front parlor. They went to the Capitol building one day. They brought the body back, I think, if I remember correctly, for that evening, and then went to the church the next day. And there's a procession or parade, and you see photographs of that, then that they go to Crown Hill from there as well. So you had to be invited to attend those services. And I think that's everything I have on the table there. So again, ribbons, calling cards, you did have the tickets, the different hair type items. So then I will just leave you with